Special counsel Jack Smith issues a wave of new subpoenas to former Trump campaign officials focused on Trump's financial crimes relating to the January 6th insurrection. Another sign we are getting closer to Donald Trump being indicted. And this is breaking news, folks. Donald Trump has just called special counsel Jack Smith a terrorist. This just happened right now as we speak during a radio interview with MAGA propagandist Mark Levin. We'll bring you that audio in just a moment. That is another independent criminal charge right there. And earlier in the day on his social media platform, Donald Trump also threatened Jack Smith and Smith's wife and family and friends. And Trump called special counsel Jack Smith a criminal and a savage in those posts. And let's compare what Trump is doing, Trump's response, to President Biden's response to the small number of classified documents that were discovered at Biden's former office at the University of Pennsylvania and in his garage. President Biden has immediately cooperated with the Department of Justice. He's not hurling insults at the special counsel appointed today by Merrick Garland, Robert Hur, or making any threats. And let's talk about that appointment of the special counsel. And remember, folks, the criminal investigation of Donald Trump by the Department of Justice and now Jack Smith regarding the documents that Trump stole. Remember, it doesn't relate to the classification status of the records, right? It's not a matter of incompetence or Trump being sloppy. The criminal charges being investigated relates to Trump's concealment, destruction, and mutilation of government records and Trump's brazen obstruction of justice, which continues to this day. And talking about some brazen obstruction, we have more MAGA fraud George Santos news to report today. MAGA Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy says he's going to continue to support the MAGA fraud George Santos, if that's even his name, because the voters of Long Island chose him. No, as someone who was from Long Island, they were defrauded by George Santos. Meanwhile, Santos went on the Steve Bannon podcast, and it was hosted today by Matt Gaetz, right? Gaetz, who's under federal criminal investigation for child sex trafficking. And he was filling in while Bannon was where? At a court appearance for the criminal charges brought against him by the Manhattan District Attorney for stealing money from donors in the We Build the Wall scam. And if that setup that I just gave you is not weird enough, George Santos proclaimed to Matt Gaetz that he has lived an entirely honest life. It's a direct quote. And that he has never been accused of anything at all of wrongdoing in his life. Another direct quote. Brett and Jordy, all these MAGA Republicans do is lie and gaslight. It's humiliating. I mean, to the international audience watching out here, they're like, what? Speaking of that, lying, gaslighting, destroying democracy, and just being freaking weirdos is the MO of the modern day MAGA Republican Party, isn't it? Because rather than focusing on issues that actually matter to the American people this week, what were the MAGA Republicans focusing their attention on this first week when they took power? Oh, it was the purple M&M, who MAGA Republicans said that the purple M&M was obese and that the green M&M was a lesbian. They've got weird fetishes for M&Ms. It's weird, folks. They talked about some conspiracy about gas stoves and Biden's taking away your gas stoves, making things up. Something about a pregnant Joker from Batman and a conspiracy about 87,000 IRS agents knocking down the people's doors. Just make it up. We also learned that MAGA Republicans don't even know how a bill becomes a law. Like, they don't know the process. The depths of depravity and idiocracy is something just so unimaginable. But here we are. So let's also end the show when we talk about some major accomplishments by President Biden. Please Can we have some good news like inflation is going down thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, that jobless claims remain low, that real wages are up, and what else is up is Biden's approval ratings are now at 50%. The benefits from some of the major legislation, things that actually became laws, like how a bill becomes a law that President Biden spearheaded, are starting to kick in, like major increases to the amount of Social Security you're receiving and major reductions to certain prescription drug prices for some people. Folks, this is the Midas Touch podcast. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Brett and Jordy Meiselas. How about that opening, huh?
Pretty good. Another slow news day, I see,
intro,
brothers.
Ben.
Another extremely slow news day. Not much to talk about. No, I'm excited to get into this. We have a lot to speak about. You know what I realize now? Republicans we speak a lot about gaslighting. Gaslighting was the word of the year in 2022. Now they are literally gaslighting by talking about gas stoves and making up lies about gas stoves. So we have gaslighting coming full circle, reaching its ultimate endpoint, them gaslighting about gaslighting. Look at that.
Because I think,
Wow.
Brett, a single member of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, one person, not Biden, not like the Democrats generally, one person said something that is pretty much, you can't dispute, that gas stoves are dangerous and action should be taken about things that are dangerous
to mitigate
and
dangers.
The MAGA Republicans said the Democrats are taking away your gas stoves. Someone on Twitter posted, good thing we phased out asbestos before it could become a culture war thing. It was so brilliant, that post.
You know what I was going to say? I was going to say, imagine these Republicans when we were trying to pass common sense regulation for things like tobacco and cigarettes and things like that. I was going to say, they'd be going on the floor, smoking cigarettes, smoking cigars, doing all this crazy stuff. And then I saw that
they're allowing
Republicans
smoking, huh?
literally are allowing smoking on their side of the house. They are smoking cigars in their offices. They are breaking the rules. So I was thinking that as a joke. And then like minutes later, it must be something with the algorithms or something, knowing what you're thinking about at all times. I see this post that the House Republicans are literally smoking like cigars in the House. If you ever wanted to pass like seatbelt laws, anything like that, they go straight to the complete opposite end with it. And they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to drive without seatbelts and I'm going to eject myself. And you'll see, I'll own the libs that way.
Don't even put that into the universe, because, you know, next thing you're going to see is they're going to bring a anti-seatbelt law to the table. I mean,
you're so right about the seatbelts. They would say, how dare you constrain my freedom? My freedom of speech is being constrained by my bodily autonomy. This is just the radical government weaponizing the seatbelt. No, they would say that. How dare you? I mean, look, they said that about putting on a mask.
Yes, please. I'm actually asking you, please stop putting this into the universe, because they will bring a bill to the table. Or
we should just try to do our own psyop on the Republicans by just announcing things that we want to get rid of, so that they then go and do it. Like anything that we actually want to get done, let's say the opposite, and then we know that they will run and do it. But yeah, to break down that story, because people must be thinking, like, where did this story come from? I know Ben hit on it briefly before. It was an interview with Bloomberg, and the guy's name was Richard Trumka Jr. He's a commissioner for the Consumer Product Safety Commission. It's one guy, not a Democrat, not Joe Biden, not someone leader in the administration. And they were talking about this independent study. They asked them about an independent study that was commissioned in December of 2022. And what the independent study said was that natural gas burning in a house from a gas stove accounts for almost 13% of childhood asthma cases in the United States. So they said, seeing that study, that it accounts for 13% of childhood asthma cases in the United States, is there any mitigation efforts we could take to try to prevent that, to try to prevent kids from being harmed? And his quote was, quote, "This is a hidden hazard. Any option is on the table. Products that can't be made safe can be banned." Basically, say, probably a dumb thing to say if you understand the conservative right-wing echo chamber media, the fascist echo chamber, but just like a normal statement, like, yeah, if your product cannot be safe, if you're going to kill people with this product or harm people with this product, perhaps we could find a way to mitigate it. And if you're unable to mitigate that harm, then perhaps you have to ban those products that can't go under the regulations. And the right wing went full, Biden is banning gas stoves, God, guns, glory, gas stoves, I think is what Jim Jordan, echoing his Elon Kanye Trump tweet, God's guns, gas stoves. You have Ronnie Jackson, who's a congressman who used to be Obama's doctor, this guy in the White House. I'll never give up my gas stove. Come and take it, pry it from my dead hands. And then they try to go back to like an old picture of Jill Biden from years ago of her using a gas stove by cooking. And you have people like Ted Cruz going, rules for thee and not for me. It's just such clowns. They just take these little sideshow antics and they blow it up. They try to make these cultural issues out of it. And nobody is coming for your gas stove. It's all fake. It's all a ruse. It's ridiculous.
And let's explain why it's a ruse. Because these MAGA Republicans are criminals. Because they are traitors, because they are stealing from you, American people, because they're taking your money and they're giving it to billionaires. So this is the fake out. Just get you all distracted. They have no policies. They have no legislation. They don't even know how bills become laws. They just think that if they say it in the House of Representatives, then therefore it is now a law. No. So they just make up crap and just try to get you angry or weird or distracted while they pick your pocket. While they are an actual cult, and while the cult leader is calling a special counsel, a prosecutor, a terrorist, because they are a full-fledged, authoritarian, fascist, despicable movement. They're not a political party. Just call these fools out. Call them fascist. Call them traitors. Let's be loud about what this is. And this is the breaking news. We got to bring it to the people right away, Brett, because as I was basically reading that opening, we learned about it. We posted it on our Twitter account. We now have the interview between Donald Trump and Mark Levin, where Donald Trump calls Jack Smith a terrorist. He calls the prosecutor a terrorist. By the way, that is a criminal conduct to make that assertion, to threaten a prosecutor like that. And look, he said a bunch of stuff about Jack Smith, which kind of went right to the line, and I think significantly crossed it. But you can argue, oh, you called him a savage. You say, oh, even potentially criminal. There's no ambiguity when you call the prosecutor a terrorist. Calling the prosecutor a terrorist. If we've got this clip, this is just breaking, folks. Let's play it right now.
This prosecutor should resign. He's got a conflict. My prosecutor.
This Jack
His name
Smith.
is Jack Smith. I wonder what his name was before Smith. I don't know. Maybe it was Smith, but it seems like such a nice name, Jack Smith. He is a terrorist. He is a Trump hater. His best friends are Weissman and all of these characters.
Yeah.
Lisa Monaco at the Justice Department, one of the top officials.
Deputy Attorney General.
This is a disgraceful situation. He should resign. His wife hates Trump, probably even beyond him. And his wife has a sister who openly hates it like a level that you can't even believe. And this is the man that's going to give me fair.
First off, you see the malignant narcissism there. My prosecutor. He ain't your freaking prosecutor. He's our prosecutor. He is the people's prosecutor. He's not your prosecutor. He's the Department of Justice special counsel who's coming for your fascist ass. That is what is going down. And you see the desperation because earlier in the day, Donald Trump started writing a lot of, he says some crazy, deranged, reprehensible, and vile things. But even before that statement, I looked at what he was posting on social media. And if we've got these posts where he goes, the special prosecutor assigned to the, quote, Get Trump case, Jack Smith, is a Trump-hating thug whose wife is a serial and open Trump hater, whose friends and other family members are even worse. And as a prosecutor in Europe, according to Rick Grinnell, put a high government official in prison because he was a Trump-positive person. Smith is known as an unfair savage and is best friends with the craziest Trump haters, including Lisa Monaco, who runs Injustice. The boxes scam is a hoax. So let me just get this straight, though. He's saying that the reason that Jack Smith put a warlord in Kosovo in jail, a warlord who tortured, maimed, and raped people and then harvested their organs. Somebody by the name of Salim Mustafa, a terrorist who Jack Smith successfully prosecuted in The Hague during the prosecutions of these Kosovo warlords. He harvested the organs of the people he tortured. And Trump's like, Mustafa was a Trumper. That's why you went after Mustafa, because he was a Trumper. How much of a malignant, crazy narcissist is this person? That's why they're talking about the purple M&M, and Tucker's calling the purple M&M is obese and the green one's a lesbian, because you've got their cult leader saying that the reason that a special prosecutor went after a warlord who raped people and terrorized people and tortured people and then harvested and sold their organs was because the terrorist was a Trump supporter. Clown show humiliating fascism. And I know I've always had enough of it before, but particularly right now, now's the time that we're louder than ever about these fascist idiots. I've had enough. I mean, seeing the House of Representatives, this is humiliating to our nation, these freaking clowns. I'm angry. I'm angry today.
You should be angry. And, you know, the closer and closer we get to Trump indictments, the angrier and crazy and more unhinged he's going to get. If you think you've seen Donald Trump unhinged, I'll tell you, you ain't seen nothing yet. It's going to keep coming. The hits are going to keep coming. The attacks are going to get more vicious. Calling special counsel Jack Smith a terrorist is just the latest example. And he says a lot of other weird, kind of odd coded things in that statement that I was picking up on in that short thing. He fits a lot of insults and a lot of really disgusting things into a really short period of time. Early on, he says, my prosecutor, I'm going through it. I wonder what his name was before Smith. He sounds like that sounds like a nice name. He's not a nice guy. I wonder what his name was before Smith. To me, that sounds a little bit like an anti-Semitic dog whistle that's blaring. Some sort of dog whistle that's blaring right there. What the hell does he mean by that? And then just like in those posts that you just read, Ben, he goes and he attacks Jack Smith's wife, Jack Smith's wife's sister, attacking the family, knowing damn well that when he does those attacks on the family, when he unleashes his wrath on them, even if it's in passing, he is putting a target on their back. He is endangering their lives. And we've read the statements from special counsel Jack Smith on past cases when he was prosecuting war crimes overseas. And he does not take kindly to witness intimidation. He does not take kindly to obstruction. And that is exactly what we are witnessing here with Donald Trump's deranged statements as he intensifies his rhetoric.
Let's talk about Trump's stolen documents for a moment. And that's one of the other things that special counsel Jack Smith is investigating. He's got the January 6th insurrection and the stolen documents. Jack Smith is not criminally investigating Donald Trump for stolen documents because Trump was just incompetent or careless, or even because Trump, had classified records. Like, the classification status, let's all remember, was actually not part of the search warrant. The crimes at issue have nothing to do with classification or incompetence. It has to do with concealment. It has to deal with destruction. It has to deal with mutilation, and it has to deal with obstruction. The question is, when you discovered that you had these records, what did you do next? Well, Donald Trump intended to steal them, but once you were called out for it, how did you respond to it? What was the response? And Donald Trump's response for over 18 months, I mean, frankly, starting in January of 2021 when he stole the records, was to continually lie, have people sign false declarations about it, himself pack certain boxes and then hide the records, have people move the documents around to hide it in different locations. That's the crime. The crime isn't that Trump was incompetent. Like, if he was merely incompetent and forgetful and just a loser, there is no mens rea. There is no intent. And I think people are forgetting that issue. So the question when it comes to Biden is, what was the intent here? What was he doing with it? And if the issue, by the way, it does seem that there was sloppiness here. Like, let's be real and have a conversation. Like, I don't want to gloss over the fact there was some sloppiness. You shouldn't have those, he shouldn't have certain records. Let's be clear that Trump had tens of thousands of records. And here we're talking like a handful when it comes to Biden. Let's also not forget that Trump likely had nuclear records about Chinese weapon systems, Iranian weapon systems, things that were transactionally likely used by Donald Trump to harm our nation. So there's massive contrast there. But then President Biden isn't threatening prosecutors and saying, we need to defund the FBI, destroy the FBI. We need to repeal all laws about espionage. You don't see Democrats or us on the Midas Touch saying, no more FBI, no more DOJ. No, I mean, look, there's got to be a process of law and order here. And, there's a special counsel that was appointed, someone by the name of Robert Hur, who was appointed. That's Robert Hur right there. There is no criminal conduct, as Biden said in the statement. He's not worried that there's going to be criminal charges. There were documents found. There are documents that were turned over. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it in the slightest bit. And don't forget, the special counsel for Trump was appointed within a day, right? Was it 24 hours, Brett, of Donald Trump announcing?
I think Trump announced on a Tuesday, they appointed a special counsel on the Friday. So I've seen a lot of people make comparisons and say, but it took X amount of hundreds of days for them to appoint a special counsel for Trump. And it took only 70 something days for them to appoint a special counsel for Biden. And we just found out about this. All of a sudden there's special counsel. That's really not a fair way to compare it right there.
Because Brett, special counsel is when there's a conflict. That's the issue. The DOJ was criminally investigating Donald Trump right after the insurrection. They also had to criminally investigate the Proud Boys who are on trial right now, and the Oath Keepers and all the other terrorists. And they have a 100% record of convictions. They haven't lost a single trial, right? For them to climb the ladder of a former president after the disaster Bill Barr. But the special counsel is just because of a conflict. That's why you appoint a special counsel, because the DOJ.
And Garland wants to avoid a conflict here because he was appointed by Biden and he wants it to be looked at fairly. I mean, what this is obviously going to end up being, unless there is something beyond our wildest expectations and Biden starts attacking the Department of Justice, none of that is going to happen. What it's going to be is they're going to review it. They're going to find that nothing was wrong and it's all going to be good. And if Trump did that from the beginning, he would be absolutely fine also. Like absolutely 100% fine. It would have been a story for a day. It would have been all taken care of. Had Trump said, oh, shoot, I have these documents. Oh, let me work with the DOJ. Let me work with NARA. Let me get it back to you guys. There would never have been any of this that has happened. But instead, he lied, he gaslit, he said he didn't have them, he said he declassified them with his mind, he said that they were his and that he's not going to give them back. He fought at every turn. It kind of reminds me of like when I was in high school, either high school or middle school. I was when you're kind of bored and like you have a group of friends and like the girls are hanging out with the older guys and stuff, like you don't have much to do except like play poker and like go to the mall. You kind of have two options. And so it's spent a lot of time at the mall, at the Walt Whitman Mall in Long Island, which probably maybe Santos knows about. And I walked into a sunglass hut and I was trying on sunglasses. I realized about 10 minutes after I walked out of the sunglass hut that I had Ray-Bans on my shirt, that I had tried them on in the store and I had left them on my shirt. And I was mortified and I ran them back to the store and I gave them back. And it was no problem because I returned them without having to be chased down by somebody. I didn't deny it. I didn't say they were mine. Had Trump just did that with the documents, he would have been fine. Which is what Biden did. When they discovered it, they brought him back and they made sure to check all these other areas. And there you go. I mean, it's really end of story after that. The special counsel process will play out, but nothing's going to come of this. And it's not going to affect the Jack Smith case. It shouldn't affect the Jack Smith case because they should be doing this by the law. It could affect optics, well, if you care about just the way things look, but under any sort of scrutiny, these things are so completely different. Like Ben said on the last episode, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like oranges and I don't know, basketball. I don't know. It's like a totally probably the worst thing I could have picked because I picked something that's kind of orange. But you get my point.
Two things before I lose them real quick. Brett, amazing sunglass hut story. What was with the anecdote in the beginning of that when you were talking about like your high school situation though? That felt like it didn't need to be a part of the story at all. You gotta paint the picture. That's thing number one. Thing number two, I cannot get the phrase Trump positive person out of my mind. Like I want to throw up with that. I feel icky because of that phrase. So those are the two things that I just want to
There's a great point, Jordy.
It sounds like you're infected. Are
You
you
beat me to
positive?
calling Brett out. You beat me to calling Brett out about the setup of the story. I think, like when I was in ninth grade and like no one would want to hang out with me, and the girls wouldn't want to hang out with me. So I
sometimes you
just
gotta
played a
paint-
lot of I just played a
sometimes
lot
you
of
gotta-
poker.
Sometimes you got to paint a picture, for everybody.
You could have
While you're
started
hanging out
the
in the mall
story.
somewhere, at the
You
Sun
could have just started the story. There was one time where I was at a mall. One time I was at a mall and I accidentally. You could have even started here. One time I was in
I
a
went to a
sunglass.
sunglass hut. Okay.
You guys know, like when you're a freshman in high school and no girls want to talk to you.
I think everybody could relate. I think everyone could relate.
Speaking of Walt Whitman, Brett, did you know that George Santos wrote the famous poems "Song of Myself," "Oh Captain, My Captain," "I Sing the Body Electric," and "Oh Mio Life"? People attribute it to Walt Whitman, but they're actually George Santos.
I heard George Santos is actually Walt Whitman. That was just his pen name the entire time.
There's no doubt that George Santos. But we mentioned that because I think that's actually within George Santos's district. By the way, we'll talk more about George Santos in a bit. One of the reasons Trump's like flipping out this way, though, is there was a Washington Post report that there was. Brett, you're still thinking about the setup to your story, right?
Yeah, I can't get it out of my mind.
The next story is going to be, well, one time when I was 9 years old.
There's such a roundabout way to get there. I love it.
Makes the show fun.
And it makes the show more than fun. So a wave of new subpoenas were sent out by Jack Smith. What Jack Smith's focusing a lot now on, we learned about the Rudy Giuliani subpoenas as well. Giuliani's relationship with like the Save America organization, all these like really just grifty names. Make America Great Again PAC, Just Save America PAC, Save America Joint Fundraising Committee, Trump Make America Great Again Fundraising Committee, and then the Election Defense Fund, which doesn't even exist. Donate to the Election Defense Fund. We saw in the January 6th, not even a real entity, just a made up thing that just gets basically funneled back to Donald Trump. So very, very smart what Jack Smith is doing, though, because in addition to the insurrection itself, in addition to the fake electors, one of the things the DOJ is great at is financial crimes and campaign finance crimes and how you funded all of this. And so that's exactly where Jack Smith's going. And I think Trump is freaking out because I think he's funneling a lot of that money to himself. He certainly wasn't funneling it to a defense fund. That wasn't going to, winning court cases when he lost about 70 of them. It was actually going, though, to lawyers to obstruct ongoing investigations like Cassidy Hutchinson's original lawyer, Stefan Pasentino, and people like that. So that's where special counsel Jack Smith is focused on. He's still focused on fake electors. He's still focused on Trump's threats to local and state election officials in states like Arizona and New Mexico and Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia and Pennsylvania. There's going to be charges for all that stuff. Yeah. And the day of the January 6th insurrection. But I think Smith realizes that the financial crimes, that's how you get mafia. You get them in the financial crimes as well. Those types of crimes, because it's documents. You see it in the document. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here's what they said. Here's what the document is. If you think that this document is false, you must convict. Here it is.
Yeah. Hey, Trump may lie, but numbers don't lie. And so he has to get around that fact. The numbers do not lie. Jack Smith is targeting the money. He's targeting the conspiracy. And when we talk about the funding, he's targeting specifically also the funding around the rallies regarding the ellipse. And you start seeing these other names come in, like Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization. If you remember, he tweeted out a tweet and then deleted it that said that he had paid for 80 or so buses to bus people to January 6th. He has since deleted that, went silent about that. So Charlie Kirk is in their targets here. All those organizations that Ben spoke about, they are narrowing in on information about what was said about Dominion and Smartmatic with the voting machines, the fraudulent elector scheme. This is all being targeted, and these are really the most expansive subpoenas that we have seen yet. And we are just learning about these now. I think these were issued sometime in early December, I believe, is when these went out. But that just goes to show you, like, there's constantly stuff going on in the background. And sometimes it also later explains some of the deranged behavior we see from people in Trump world when we realize, oh, why are they freaking out? And then you find that a few days later or a month later, oh, they all got hit with subpoenas that day. That's why they were having a meltdown. You're seeing it all start to come together. And like I said before, as we get closer to the indictments, as Jack Smith gets closer with the financial stuff, getting closer to all these individual things, you're just going to start seeing this whole MAGA world just totally melt down on levels that we haven't even seen before.
You know how in third grade, Brett, you know how in third grade gym class,
Yeah.
when you think you're playing dodgeball, but it turns out they announce this is going to be a square dancing and you have to find a square dance partner. And it makes you really nervous. Like, is someone going to be my square dance partner? And then what if the wrong person asks you to be their square dance partner? So do you make the move first? Let's talk about George Santos. You see how that transition made absolutely no sense?
I thought you had another story about me that you were going to start telling.
Well, because my high school is in George Santos's district, which just bugs the heck out of me. I interned for that's the tie, and I interned for the predecessor to George Santos's predecessor. Tom Suozzi was the Democrat who took over for Steve Israel. And when I went to George Washington University, don't worry, I won't tell you my George Washington. You know, when you go into your freshman dorm room and you have 4 roommates and you got to rearrange.
I'm just so happy this happened to Brett and not me. I'm so thankful for that.
I interned for that 2nd congressional district became the 3rd congressional district, and to just see Santos disgrace our hometown like that. We live in the 3rd congressional district now with some of the redistricting. It's some of the most embarrassing, stuff in the world. And we got to pull up this. I gave you this setup earlier, and Brett, I want you to maybe talk this through a little bit, because you have Santos. He's going on the Steve Bannon podcast. It's being hosted by Matt Gaetz, because the Republican Party, it's all about becoming fascist podcasters and weirdo podcasters, right? Steve Bannon, who's already just been convicted of obstruction of Congress.
Yeah, that right there should be a scandal. That sentence, Matt Gaetz on Steve Bannon's podcast, that right there is a scandal.
Was just convicted of contempt of Congress. Matt Gaetz is being investigated for sex trafficking of a minor by the feds. He's filling in because Bannon was at a court appearance, because Bannon was charged by the Manhattan District Attorney from stealing from people. The same thing he was charged by the feds that he received a pardon by Donald Trump for doing, but you can't pardon for state crime. So the Manhattan DA is prosecuting Bannon. Bannon's playing all these like tricks and games in court. He keeps firing his lawyers and then laughing in the hallways so he can delay his court dates. That's the new thing that he does. He just brings in a lawyer, fires the lawyer, brings in a new lawyer, fires the lawyer to try to drag this thing out. So that's what Bannon's doing. But in any event, while that's
when that happens, Ben, real quick, sorry to interrupt. Does he have to pay the legal fees? Like is he paying those lawyers, do you think? Or
yeah, but not he's probably paying them all that not all that much money. What he's taking advantage of is in criminal cases.
Yeah.
The court system and the Constitution safeguards the due process rights of the person being accused a lot. And there's something called ineffective assistance of counsel as a way that you could potentially, even if you lose the case, it's one weird area where you could blame your lawyer constitutionally and say, I did not have the appropriate constitutional representation. And because of that, I would have won if I had. So what he's doing is creating all that havoc. So when he's convicted, he can say ineffective assistance of counsel. Meanwhile, he's delaying it. And the courts can't be like, stop firing your lawyers, because then they'd be violating his due process rights under the Constitution. So the Constitution that he wants to destroy, that affords due process, he's playing these games. But that's why he wasn't hosting his podcast. And that's why Matt Gaetz, who's being investigated for child sex trafficking, was interviewing Santos, who is being investigated at a state, local, federal, and international level because he was caught stealing from an elderly individual in Brazil. He fled from Brazil when his mom was the caretaker of this elderly individual. Now, Santos has been accused of everything, and he's admitted that he's lied about all of these things. But on this podcast, Santos says, I've lived an honest life, and I've never even been accused of anything. The real issue we need to focus on is Burisma in Ukraine. The real issue we need to, because we know what people do there. No, you're just freaking liars. You're just gaslighting liars. And that's what they do. Just lie to their base, because then their base goes, oh, Burisma and George Santos. Like, just made up stuff. Like, let's go after stoves and let's go after M&Ms. And they're coming for you, 87,000 IRS agents. And you know what? Because the media's been such a big freaking failure, There hasn't been anyone really until our network and some other independents to come in and scream at these fools. There's no one who's done it. They've just been able to get a free pass. It's like, Brett, in gym class when you are playing. Listen. It's like in gym class when you're playing basketball.
Boy, here
and
we
the
go.
defender doesn't even know how to play D. They don't even know how to, how to defend.
Good one.
So you just go right by them, and then you keep making the layups over and over again until the gym teacher finally tells you, look, this is just gym class. This isn't even like competitive ball. Brett, play the clip of Jordan. Play the clip of Jordan.
What a setup.
Work you did that was the origin of those resources.
Look, I've worked my entire life. I've lived an honest life. I've never been accused, sued of any bad doing. So, it's the equity of my hard working self, and I've invested inside of me. Like I said, it didn't come from Burisma. It didn't come from Ukraine, Russia, China, unlike some folks that we all know that get money from those sources.
It didn't come from Burisma. It didn't come from China. I've been honest my entire life. The
guy's a serial liar. He's lying about lying. He's lying, and he can't stop lying. Plus, this is also in the midst of all this new reporting now about potential financial crimes from George Santos. So while he's saying that, I didn't get my money from here, and I got my money working the honest way, and I'm an honest person, I was never accused of anything. There are some real sketchy things out there. And like Ben was saying about the Department of Justice before relating to Donald Trump, financial crimes are the way that a lot of these people go down. In fact, if you look at a lot of past congressmen and senators who have been indicted and convicted of crimes, the common through line between just about all of them, nearly every single one, is they all got indicted based on financial crimes, based on financial fraud. And the New York Times reported on this mysterious unregistered fund. You guys see this? It raised big money for Santos, basically pretending it was a political organization, taking all these donations and for Santos, calling up big dollar donors. It was called Redstone Strategies. It was described in an email to a big money donor as an independent expenditure committee. It was not. And they said it was a group supporting Mr. Santos's bid to flip a Democratic House seat in New York. They said, we've currently raised $800,000. We just need $700,000 more dollars. Can you help? All this money ended up going to this private entity, not to any sort of campaign. And there's no evidence that any of it was actually used to help George Santos's campaign. So he was also like grifting off these donors, just taking the money in this private entity in a way that it could not be traced by the FEC. This organization was not even registered at all. Then Santos also received payments as recently as April 2021 from a financial services company accused by the SEC of being a, quote, classic Ponzi scheme. And that income he never disclosed. We've seen that disparity of his income where he literally couldn't make rent. He couldn't make rent. And this is while he was pretending to be rent. He was pretending to be a landlord throughout all this also. But he wasn't. He literally couldn't make the money for rent. And then all of a sudden he went from that to all of a sudden having $1.7 million and being able to donate $700,000 or so to his own campaign. So do I think
clear? Here's where here's the extra part of the scam though, because it wasn't donate, it was loan. And the question is when it's a loan, you're gonna have to repay the loan. So by doing it as a loan, if you're following here, like I have litigated some Ponzi scheme cases. In fact, I had litigated at one time. And I don't know if this is still the stat in California. It was called In Re MedCap. I was appointed by the SEC through a receiver to be their counsel to pursue certain claims against a Ponzi scheme that had these various like entities, MedCap 1, MedCap 2, MedCap 3, and they claimed they were buying these receivables. But one of the things I'm looking for here, Brett, based on that experience, is it's a loan. You have these other shady financial dealings. So if he's loaning the money and somehow he's getting this infusion of $1.7 million, and that money's then being loaned to his campaign, what the criminal mind thinks about, and again, this is the accusation. He hasn't been charged or convicted yet, but I think he will be. And what you're telling the people who are giving you this money is, look, just give me the money. I'm going to loan it to my campaign. And then what I'm going to do is I'll be able to raise the money back, then give you back the money and repay your loan. it's kind of another version of the Ponzi scheme that he did when he worked at the Ponzi scheme.
Little
But it's the
laundering-ish.
Ponzi scheme-ish.
You know, by the way, do you know who I have to give a big shout out to? Who made the best comparison to who Santos actually is? It's not Catch Me If You Can. It's not Frank William Abagnale Jr. That gives the guy way too much credit. It's Anna Delvey. Do y'all remember that show that played over the last year or so? It was like the hottest thing on TV. And it's a true story. It's this woman who had conned all these banks, all these people into continuing to buy her thing because she pretended to be like this rich heiress, and that she would pay them all back eventually. And she's just a liar, lied about everything. So big shout out actually to a comedian and friend of the network, John Walsh, who made that connection there. But Santos is the political version of Anna Delvey. Stamp it, put it in the books. It's just a fact.
I think Manchurian Candidate, but Brett, why don't you play what Kevin McCarthy was saying when he? There's two videos, Brett. Do we have both McCarthy videos? Because
yeah, I have yesterday's and I have today's. So
okay, so let's first play yesterday's McCarthy, this weak traitor, this fascist McCarthy. Second, what a play the clip. Play the clip of the spineless Kevin McCarthy from yesterday.
County GOP called on him to resign today. Does that affect your thinking at all? What do you intend to do about Congressman Santos?
I try to stick by the Constitution. The voters elected him to serve. If there is a concern and he has to go through the ethics, we'll let him move through that. But right now, the voters have a voice in the decisions, not where people pick and choose based upon what somebody's press has.
Would you,
so he will continue to serve.
are you going to take any action against him at this point? Are any of these allegations acceptable to you?
What are the charges against him?
Well, I mean,
is there a charge against him? You know, in America today, you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, what are the charges? There's a lot of charges: campaign finance violations, lying about everything. He admitted to lying, but now he's saying he's honest about everything. And then he said, "Oh, well, the voters liked him. He defrauded the voters. He lied that his mother died on 9/11. Then he lied that his mother survived 9/11. His dad survived 9/11. All lies. He lied that his parents or grandparents were Holocaust survivors in a district."
Thank you.
That has a large Jewish population and also has lots of people in the financial services industry. So he lied about his entire background to defraud voters. And even, the Long Island Republican Party, the Nassau County Republican Party, they showed the New York Times his resume. He lied when he was being vetted. He lied.
His entire resume was a fake.
His entire resume was the
Kevin McCarthy, the guy's just a creep, right? The guy's just a total creep, this guy. And we should note also, not only is Kevin McCarthy not punishing George Santos for any of this, he's actually putting George Santos on committees, not as committee chairs or committee heads, but he's putting him on committees. So good. Why shouldn't I put him on his committee? This guy is going to be making decisions about your life, about your family's life. This guy doesn't even know who he is. His name isn't even George Santos, apparently. Nobody knows who this guy is, how he got his money, who's funding him. And that's a huge liability to national security and to honestly all of our lives, because that legislation affects us personally.
And let's be clear about why. Let's be clear real quick why McCarthy is doing this too. Right? The Republicans hold the slimmest of slim majorities in the House. Santos has proven himself to be a McCarthy loyalist, as we saw for the Speaker of the House votes. So Santos can't go anywhere if you're McCarthy, because all of a sudden now you put yourselves in jeopardy of just slimming that majority even further and further. And so McCarthy's going to try and keep this guy on his good side as much as possible and just really, bend the knee to all of these MAGA extremists.
I just don't get it, though. I just don't get it, because McCarthy got what he wanted from him. He wanted the vote for Speaker. He has the majority. He doesn't need Santos. Yes, it's a slim majority, but he really doesn't need Santos at this point. And every single day, and those reporters should keep it up. Those reporters are doing an incredible job.
Yes,
the ones who are chasing him down there. I think Rachel Scott from ABC is one of them. They're doing an absolutely incrediable job holding his feet to the fire. There's some hilarious moments too. He's also the goofiest fucking guy on the planet.
Yeah. As angry as I am by him, I'm gonna say it. It's not great. I laugh at half the shit he does because he walks into his office and he falls down. He trips over a newspaper. Where are you going with this, Ben? What's up?
Okay, what McCarthy is to Trump, the lapdog, right? McCarthy wants that for himself, and in somebody like Santos, he owns Santos. Santos will do whatever he tells him to do. And that is what weak people need. That is why he's doing it. And also to the slimmest of it's yeah, he needs someone who's going to be a foot soldier. And if McCarthy's like, hey, you need to do this or that, do his dirty work, Santos will do all of that for him, because the moment McCarthy says you're out, you're out. So
and Brett, here's also why I slightly disagree with your position on that. I mean, it's a completely valid point, but where I see this is, yes, McCarthy used him for that moment in time when he had needed him, but then sort of alluding to what Ben was just hitting on, you know, these Gateses of the world, right? They could call for another vote for speaker anytime they want, essentially, based on the rules that McCarthy had, you know, given up to all of these people. So he's going to always need Santos in his pocket. That's why he's not getting rid of him. He's just going to need that guy to stay around.
It just seems like so much chaos to have in Congress every single day, and such a liability when you don't need that. Like the American people see that, and they know that this guy is a complete BS artist. They know that he's a fraud. And every time you see him on TV and you see Kevin McCarthy defending him, it's just a bad look for I mean, keep him in there if you want. Like, it's a bad look for you, Republican Party. Let me also clarify a mistake I made on the last show, because I've been looking it up, and actually anybody is part of that motion to vacate. It could be anybody in the entire House who could do a motion to vacate. Ben was right. I corrected Ben, saying I think it might be just the Republicans who could make the vote to try to oust Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Ugh, that sounded dirty coming out of my mouth. But in fact, it's everybody. It's not just the majority party. So my mistake, had to correct, Ben.
It's like when you're playing tag during recess.
You want to see this other high school connection? So George Santos, one of the things he also lied about to the Nassau Republicans. And I got to give the Nassau GOP at least a little bit of credit here.
Sure.
For coming out and using a really strong, at least they used strong language to condemn him.
Strong language.
In their research, but they called him out directly, and they showed at least a little bit of spine when Kevin McCarthy shows absolutely zero. They did what anybody should do, you know? That's how politics should work. That's the bare minimum. But one of the things he apparently told the Nassau Republicans is that he was like the champion of his volleyball team at Baruch College.
You play volleyball.
And I'm just saying, I literally was the champion of my volleyball team at Plainview High School, county champs, baby. And I have the photos to prove it, and semifinals in senior year. So take that, George Santos, you fraud. The real volleyball champ is right here on the Midas Touch podcast.
We got to talk about the MAGA Republican fetish of M&Ms. Like, that was a big focus. We got to talk more about their focus on the stoves. Then we got to talk about some great developments by President Biden, actually delivering real things, actual laws, not like performative bills that you could say, we defunded the IRS. You know, you didn't, you MAGA Republicans. You didn't do that at all. But let's talk about President Biden's accomplishments. But I want to let everyone know too, if you're liking this independent media right here, we're not funded by any outside investors at all. So check us out at patreon.com/Midas Touch, patreon.com/Midas Touch. You know, with no outside investors, we're 100% accountable to you and you alone. We're 100% independent, 100% pro-democracy, and we're 100% kicking the ass of both sides media that failed us all. Check us out. You'll love the exclusive content like we just did, an exclusive Q&A session at patreon.com/Midas Touch. Also get access to exclusive merch drops, exclusive podcasts, and so much more. But help grow this independent media platform. It really helps. No matter where you are in the world, you can do it. So whenever you ask me, what can we do to help this platform? No worries if you can't, because it is a membership and there's different membership tiers there, but it does go a long way. And I want to give a shout out to our next sponsor. I love this next sponsor. It's called Grove Collaborative, and they've got a great deal for you. Did you know that only 9% of plastic actually gets recycled, no matter how much we put in our recycling bin? And at Grove Collaborative, they believe it's time to ditch single-use plastics for good. Grove creates and curates everything you need for a sustainable home, like Grove Collaborative concentrated cleaners and refillable glass bottles. They're friendlier to the planet and twice as effective as the leading natural brands. Join over 2 million households shopping sustainably at Grove. So just do this. Go to Grove, grove.com/MeidasTouch, MeidasTouch today. And get this. Get a free starter set plus free shipping with your first order. That's Grove, grove.com/MeidasTouch. Go to grove.com/MeidasTouch today to get a free starter set plus free shipping with your first order. That's grove.com/MeidasTouch. And I personally love the pet products Grove sells because it takes the guessing out of making sure what you're buying is safe for your dog or cat. I bought the Hurley dog bone for both my doggos, and they absolutely love it. When you're on some of these other websites, you don't know the products you're getting are good for the environment. That's why I like Grove Collaborative. They take all the guessing out. You just know when you order from their site, the products you're getting are sustainable and great. I use Grove, so check it out. Grove.com/MeidasTouch. Purple M&M, stoves, conspiracy theories about stoves. Conspiracy theories about 87,000 IRS agents knocking down your doors. Totally false. Completely wrong. They lie, these MAGA Republicans, because they want to protect their billionaire friends like Donald Trump, who can just have no audits of himself. And what this is not 87,000 IRS agents. It's replacing vacancies at the IRS with lots of IT employees, spots that need to be filled over the next decade so the IRS can actually function and do its job. It is completely false that there is 87,000 agents knocking down your door. Totally made up. So they make up the conspiracy. Then they introduce a bill to the conspiracy that they've created. So a bill to address their conspiracy. They then pass the bill on party lines, and then they brag to the public that that it's a law, that they have now officially defunded the IRS. Like, here are all the statements. This is Ashley, is a congresswoman. She goes, "It's official. We just defunded the 87,000 new IRS agents. The IRS should be focused on customer service, not on targeting hardworking Americans." Like, if you wanted to have just a real conversation, just say what it is. Just say, look, we don't like the IRS being staffed. And so we're introducing a bill so that, because we think 87,000 people, despite all the vacancies, is too much. If you want to have a real conversation, like, we can interact like normal human beings, but you go there and it's just like, okay, like, I can't even talk to you, because you're just being weirdos and conspiracy theorists to try to make people angry. We're not having a real, legitimate conversation. Well, if you actually focused on what they're saying as well, it would instantly add $150 billion to the deficit. So what do they say when they're confronted with that? Well, you're going to add $150 billion to the deficit by this proposal. They go, well, who said it? The Congressional Budget Office, a bipartisan group that you've cited before when it's suited your needs. They go, the CBO doesn't know what they're talking about. That's some deep state crap. The CBO, it's fake news from the
Same
CBO.
thing they said for the tax cuts too, whether that it would do the deficit. They said, oh no, the CBO, you can't trust the CBO. That's not the tax cuts. They're going to pay for themselves. They're going to pay. There's this hidden money that's going to come in from the tax cuts. You'll see, and it's going to supercharge the economy. You'll see. Just wait. And as expected, massive deficits because of those tax cuts.
And the Republicans increased our deficit by $9 trillion. President Biden has decreased our deficit by close to $2 trillion. Those are the facts. Those are the facts, because when Trump did it, he didn't have any way to pay for the tax cuts. So when you give these massive tax cuts to billionaires and you lie to people and say, look, if we do this, let me tell you what rich people are going to do. They do what rich people do. They're just going to give it to everybody. They're going to hand it out. They're going to trickle it down to you. The trickle down. Trickle down. No, they're not. They're going to hoard it. They're going to keep it in offshore accounts. They're going to do stock buybacks, and they're going to screw hardworking Americans and middle-class Americans. That's what they're going to do with it. That's what they did with it. Why? Because that's what they always do with it. And they know that because that is the base they are trying to support with it. So they run up a crazy deficit and then they go, well, I'm a fiscal hawk. What? Well, you're a fiscal hawk? You're just saying words. It's just a bunch of words. Just because you say you're a fiscal hawk. That's why Democrats, like with Hakeem Jeffries, with Richie Torres, I like the Democrats punching back. Dan Goldman, right? I mean, some Democrats are punching back now. That's why you got to go, you're a fiscal hawk? No, you're a fiscal fraud. You're a fiscal fraud. Fiscal hawk? What are you talking about? And you just got to call them out. You don't let them get away with those terminologies. And here, if you've been watching the Midas Touch podcast, you know that starts with do not call these idiots conservative. Do not call these radical extremist traitors conservative. Call them MAGA fascists. Call them fascists. Call them extremists. Call them destructionists. They want to terminate our Constitution. They want to deny elections unless they win. They want to support global pandemics. Okay, that doesn't sound like they're conserving anything to me. They support insurrectionists. They call them political prisoners. Stop calling them conservatives. And do me a favor to the tens of thousands and eventually hundreds of thousands of people who listen and watch this, with more people watching this than many and most cable shows. If you have a friend who calls Matt Gaetz or Santos or McCarthy or one of these MAGA Republicans, they call him conservative, just say it. You'll see I'll do it from time to time. If someone on the show calls them, go, okay, they're not a conservative. Can we call them extremists? Words and framing matters. So if you get away with something, I'm a fiscal hawk, you go, oh, well, they must be a fiscal hawk. No. You're not. You ran up the deficit $9 trillion, you idiot.
Yeah, and it's all also in the aims of they run up the deficit. They then make a big fuss out of it. They usually blame Democrats for it. And they go, what are we going to do? We have such a huge deficit. Oh, I guess we need to cut Social Security and Medicare. I guess we need to cut these programs that are helping people. I guess we need to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. They always end up going to that instead of the problem of what caused the deficit, which is their fiscal policies, which are crazy, which are absolutely asinine. And Hakeem Jeffries, Ben, I mean, I like his messaging from what I've seen so far. He was very quick to call that dumb weaponization where they made a committee of the Republicans to basically investigate the investigators who are investigating them. And Hakeem Jeffries called it the Insurrection Protection Committee, which I thought was so spot on. He's been really, really good. And that language matters. That language goes a long way because Republicans always gaslight in their language in order to try to get their point across. Think about the Freedom Caucus. Everything they say is typically the opposite of what they want. The Freedom Caucus are literally the people who are pushing the most restrictive laws to take away your freedoms in this country. They have the nerve to call themselves the Freedom Caucus. We need to constantly be calling them out. We need to be constantly highlighting that. And they just found an easy target. Let's face it, the IRS is an easy target. Nobody likes tax season. Nobody likes doing their taxes. It's complicated. It's annoying. You got to pay money. It's an easy target, but these are absolutely lies. And when you have that representative who you read before say the IRS should be focused on customer service, these are literally to try to make customer service better for folks. I know so many people last year who tried to call the IRS during their taxes when they had issues and they couldn't get through to a real human being because there aren't enough employees there as is. And over the next decade, over 50,000 employees are expected to retire. They got to refill those spots and they need to train people to do the job. And they're just in their play mode right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene saying the same thing. So far this week, when the GOP majority has defunded Biden's 87,000 IRS army, no, you didn't. You did nothing. Let me tell you, you did nothing except make fools out of yourself and embarrassed yourself on a global stage this week. That's what
it's all theater for them. It's all theater for them, Ben. It's all theater for them.
You guys know, Jordy, do you know why?
Hold on. It's all theater for them. This Republican Party, we've said it before. I'm just going to say it more directly. They don't care about you, listener. They don't care about the American people. What they care about is how they can continue to line their pockets and line their donors' pockets. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they don't want to see this country succeed. Absolutely not. That would be the worst thing for them. They want this country to go to hell as long as they get rich along the way. That's all they care about.
Why do you think they focused on the stove? And I could tell you the answer. They focused on the stove because inflation is going down. So as the price of groceries is going down, what they're trying to make people think is, all right, now that I could finally afford groceries again, I can't cook because of the debt. That's why, just so you know, that's the psychology of why to focus on stoves, as Biden's Inflation Reduction Act is actually doing what it's supposed to be doing, you know, among other reasons. But you may be wondering, like, well, why'd they focus on that? Well, I can't give you a good reason of why they're focusing on the I can give you a good reason why they focus on the M&Ms. It allows them to perpetuate their anti-trans and their anti-LGBTQ agenda by doing it through these kind of, you know, characters. And they can go, oh, well, look how woke everybody is. Even our M&Ms, you know, that we grew up with, like even our M&Ms are becoming gay, you know, and they, you know, and it allows them as a proxy to say the misogynistic, anti-LGBTQ plus things, but if they direct it at a human, they'll be called out for it, right? So it allows them to direct it at an inanimate object. What was that called, Brett? For what was the term from English where an inanimate object kind of talks?
Anamorphic.
Let's see, it's Jay.
You asked Brett. I'm the vocabulary guy over here. Come on.
So that is why they do it. So just this is what Fox. This is what
it's not called that. It's not called that.
I think an anamorph was a book. I'm embracing Jordy's. Okay, so this is what Fox was talking about. Brett, play the first one where Fox says that China is going to take over because of the M&Ms. If we've got that clip.
If this is what you need for validation, an M&M that is a color that you think is associated with feminism, then I'm worried about you. I think this is the kind of thing that makes China say, like, oh, good, keep focusing on that. Yeah. Keep focusing on giving people their own color M&Ms while we, you know, take over all of the mineral deposits in the entire world.
So what she's referring to, guys, is anthropomorphic. I can't even speak.
Anamorphic.
Anthropomorphic.
That's what anthropomorphic.
Oh,
you said anamorphs.
No, yeah, you said something
Play
totally different.
No, you
rewind.
We'll play it later.
But yeah, so yeah, that's exactly what China is focusing on. They're going, oh, the U.S. and their M&Ms, we're going to take them over because they made purple M&Ms and with smiley faces and heel. I honestly, you can't even follow the argument, but they inject this and they inject it like at every show. Like it's a coordinated thing throughout the entire Fox lineup. Like every single show they do, like, okay, you get your hit in on the M&Ms today. Yep, we got that. Block B, we got M&Ms.
Block B M&Ms.
You got your Joker, pregnant Joker. Oh yeah, we're leading with pregnant Joker. What about you? Oh, we're closing with pregnant Joker tonight. Yeah, that's what's going on. Oh, we got the stove. Stove is the climax of the show. That's the big moment, everybody.
Yeah, are we going to talk about like inflation, or are we going to talk about like healthcare? No. We don't. Biden's got that under control. M&Ms here. Play the Tucker Carlson one.
The Tucker clip is deranged.
Woke M&Ms have returned. The green M&M got her boots back, but apparently is now a lesbian, maybe. And there's also a plus-sized, obese purple M&M. So we're going to cover that, of course, because that's what we do.
Okay, wait. The plus size, the obese M&M, as he refers to it, that's a peanut M&M. Has Tucker Carlson never seen a damn peanut M&M? And I'm just gonna say it. I don't care if I get kicked off the show. Tucker Carlson wants to have sex with these M&Ms. It's just a fact.
They're anthropomorphic. Jordy, ow now, brown cow.
You're not gonna come for me after your story from the intro of this. I mean, that's what everyone's really still focused on. But I mean, the Republican Party and really just Fox in general and just that sort of media, they've lost the plot. They don't. That's all I could say when I watch these things. It gives me like the chills.
Very verbose, very wordy, Jordy. Very.
I'm very actiony. Yeah. I said
very philosophical. Yeah. When I just watch it, it just makes me want to say anamorphs, Brett. But what they are trying to
Animaniacs.
You're lucky, Jay, that you've got me keeping the show on.
Keep it on the rails, man. Keep it on the rails.
Keep it on the rails, Ben. And what Fox is trying to cover up for is the fact that there's some good economic indicators. Brett, why don't you tell us about the latest on inflation and Biden's approval numbers and just some good signs in the economy?
Well, there's a lot to talk about there, Ben.
Thank you, bro. Let's go. What are you talking about?
Let's talk about that, fellas. How about that? So for the last 6 months, inflation's been coming down. That's big news. Inflation's obviously been a big issue for Americans who have been having to pinch pennies, and we've all seen the rising cost of goods, mainly from the effects of there were a bunch of things. I mean, we had the world kind of getting back to quote unquote normal after COVID. Supply chains were increasingly messed up. Then there was the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Through all of that, inflation now, because a lot of measures have been taken and a lot of that is in a much different place now. Inflation has now come down for 6 months in a row. Annual inflation actually fell to 6.5%, which is the lowest level it's been since October 2021. That is a big deal, and that is going to be felt in people's pockets. And so I think that is incredibly important. Gas now, right now, gas prices down more than $1.70 from their peak. That is absolutely huge. You see food inflation slowing. Last month, we saw a decrease, was the smallest increase in food prices in almost 2 years. One of the things right now that is still kind of expensive out there for people are eggs. Eggs are like the one thing now that are expensive, and that's because there's a bird flu, which is obviously something that is out of people's control. So that's why egg costs are high. But generally, the increase of food prices are coming down. So that's good. Wages are also higher. And not only are wages higher when we're just talking about wages in general, but real wages, when you adjust for inflation, are higher now than they were 6 months ago. We had the lowest unemployment in 50 years. That's a pretty good stat right there. Nearly 11 million jobs have been created since Biden was inaugurated. Also a really good stat right there. And now we're also seeing all the things take effect of the Biden administration from those first couple of years. All that legislation that we talked about that got signed on Biden's desk. For example, insulin is now capped at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare. That's taking effect today. That is a complete game changer, a complete life changer and life saver for people. So we got a lot of good news to look forward to. We got a lot of good on the horizon. Things seem to be taking a positive turn with those economic factors, while other economic indicators have been and remain strong. So I think that's all good. I think we should have an optimistic outlook, no matter how much Republicans want to try to paint a picture of everything in disarray. The facts on the ground are not there. We're starting to see Biden's approval rating at the highest that it's been in a really, really long time. Biden cracking 50% approval in the new YouGov, The Economist poll, 47% disapprove. We haven't seen those numbers in a very, very, very long time for it to be at 50%. There's some funny questions on these polls that I saw, because they'll ask things that are facts, but as poll questions. And it's really interesting when you actually see what Americans think and how it differs from reality. And I'm not sure who is to blame for this. I don't know if it's the media. I don't know if it's the politicians for not messaging correctly. I'm not sure what it is. We could get to the bottom of it. But 51% of Americans think that we're in a recession. We're not in a recession. There's no indicators of a recession, yet 51% of Americans think we are. But despite 51% of Americans believing that to be true, Biden's approval ratings are at 50%, which I think shows a lot of his strength. And I think a lot of that has to do with the contrast that we've shown throughout this entire episode. While Biden has been putting in the work, getting things done, while we've seen the seriousness of the work of House Democrats, of Senate Democrats, of President Biden getting together to pass legislation with the narrowest of majorities, extending a hand across the aisle to Republicans to pass legislation on a bipartisan level where needed, you see the absolute chaos and mayhem already of these Republicans when they came in right now with Santos, with McCarthy. They're just an absolute mess. And I think when you put those two together, like we say, everything in this country politically, a lot of it is a choice. It's not, you don't get a pick of whatever you want in the world. You have two options. And here you see a Republican Party, which has just embraced fascism wholeheartedly, which lies, which gaslights, which cannot even do simple things correctly or effectively at all. They can't even elect a Speaker of the House in under 15 votes. They can't even expel a known fraud from their house. You have that, and then you actually have a Democratic Party who's just like, you know, they might do things you don't agree with all the time, but they're at least kind of normal on the whole, and don't support insurrections and stuff like that. So when you put the choice together with those two, I think it becomes pretty clear. I think people are seeing that contrast, and I think we need to keep fighting for our values and keep pushing forward. The pro-democracy movement is strong. We need to keep pushing forward, and we need to keep highlighting the bizarre and deranged behavior of these treasonous Republicans.
Jordy?
It's a mic drop moment right there, Brett. That's a great Brett rant to end the show.
Yeah.
So I Googled anamorphic while Brett was ranting, and it was a good rant. But
anamorphic.
I Googled it. It says denoting or relating to a distorted projection or drawing that appears normal when viewed from a particular point or with suitable mirror or lens. I don't know where I pulled that word from. I've never used that word in my life.
Yeah, it's actually, the word is anthropomorphic, but anamorphic you could try to say that it applies. But I'm glad you looked it up. And Brett, though, on a more serious note, and I think you got the alert the same time I got the alert, although this is a show about politics, this is live. And so heartbreaking news coming across the wire that Lisa Marie Presley, singer-songwriter and the only child of Elvis, has died at the age of 54 after hospitalization. Her mother, Priscilla Presley, has told the Associated Press, according to TMZ, she suffered a cardiac arrest. And so our hearts and prayers go out to Lisa Marie Presley's family on this incredibly difficult day. Rest in peace. I'm Ben Meiselas from the Midas Touch Network. As I mentioned earlier, you can check us out at patreon.com/Midas Touch if you want to support independent media. I think it's more important now than ever. Go to patreon.com/Midas Touch. Again, it really does help. So if you're able to do that, do it. You can check us out at store.midastouch.com as well. Store.midastouch.com for some great pro-democracy merch. You can check it out there and support our sponsor. And it's a really good sponsor that does great work for the environment and will get you great products that you could use around your house and does all the research for you. It's grove.com/MidasTouch. And what a great discount they're giving you when you use our code. Just go to grove.com/MidasTouch. You'll get the free starter set plus a free shipping with your first order, grove.com/MidasTouch. It's been an honor and a pleasure to spend this time with you all. We're so grateful for everybody who watches and listens to this. Make sure you share with friends, family, coworkers, colleagues. Spread the message. It's so important that you do that. And we are so grateful for you. We know that this show, this network is nothing without you. And it's more than a network. It's a community. And it's a community that's made up of all the pro-democracy loving Midas Mighty out there. And we're so grateful for you. Again, we'd be nowhere without you. So until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by my younger brothers, Brett and Jordy Meiselas. Jordy, take it away.
Shout out to the Midas Mighty. At Midas Touch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.midastouch.com. That's store.midastouch.com.